In Module 6, we'll examine the intersection of bioethics and intellectual property rights by asking a very controversial question. Is it ethically permissible to patent or copyright genes, embryos, or their parts? It's a question worth asking since the United States Patent and Trademark Office, the USPTO, has granted more than 50,000 patents related to genetic products and methods since 1980, including patents for bioengineered life forms, DNA cloning, and genetically modified organisms, otherwise known as GMOs. Clearly, the USPTO thinks that patenting life, as we now commonly say, is both legal and beneficial. However, many ethicists are opposed to this view. One of the most common objections is that genetic patents privatize forms of life that belong to nature itself, our common heritage. The ownership that a gene patent confers thus transfers to private hands what is most intrinsically ours, namely elements of the human genome. Another ethical concern is that patenting will lead to the unscrupulous commercialization of biomedicine, resulting in human and animal exploitation as profit-maximizing corporations leverage their legal right to monopolize treatments based on patented genetic sequences. Finally, the availability of any patented biomedical intervention can be held hostage by licensing fees and restrictions that limit access to the patented technology. The result is that organizations that are potential competitors or that have limited financial resources may be effectively precluded from using the patented technology, thus discouraging potentially valuable scientific research. On the other hand, those who defend the patentability of life forms, such as our first author, Lawrence Sung, argue that patents are an effective tool for promoting creativity and innovation. Sung claims that researchers who enjoy the benefits of patented intellectual property will disclose their inventions to the public, knowing that their intellectual property is protected. Without patents, he argues, researchers would not disclose their inventions for fear of piracy and would rely instead on private arrangements and closely guarded trade secrets. And since discoveries would not be publicly divulged, but instead zealously guarded, other scientists might needlessly duplicate experiments. If we add to these considerations the enormous costs that usually accompany biomedical research and development, we might agree with Sung's utilitarian thesis, namely that patents for genes and other life forms are not only desirable, but necessary for biomedical innovation. Against this view, our second author, David Kopsel, argues that patents hinder innovations insofar as they require researchers to obtain licenses from multiple patentees in order to market their own discoveries. But Kopsel's primary concern is that we could be prohibited from examining portions of our own genetic code unless we agreed to pay royalties to the patent holders. And this, he claims, violates a basic deontological right, ownership of one's own body, including knowledge about it. His conclusion is that it's unethical to grant patents over naturally occurring life forms and genes. The discussion board for this module asks you to identify and explain the moral principles at work in this debate. Additionally, you'll be asked to examine a hypothetical case involving two boys, Adam and Brian, each 7 years old and short for their age. Adam will never grow much taller than 5 feet because his body does not produce enough human growth hormone. When he's an adult, Adam will be much shorter than his mother and dad, who are both closer to 6 feet tall. Brian will be short because he's inherited his body build from his parents, who are both about 5 feet tall. The attending doctor is considering human growth hormone for Adam, but not Brian. When she asks for your recommendation, what will you advise? By now, you know enough to assess such issues from both a consequentialist as well as a deontological perspective. We look forward to learning how you'll counsel the doctor in this case, and especially the reasons that you offer for your advice. That's a conversation I'd enjoy hearing.